back again with another review for the Sandman. My name is Josh, thanks for checking out the channel, and we're here, as the thumbnail again indicated, this is for episode 4, I believe. Yes, we just got done with episode 4, and this one was Hope in Hell, I believe is what it was called, and this was probably my favorite episode. It definitely toned the violence down a little bit, but that's okay, and there was definitely a little bit implied, but it really expanded on the lore a lot, and I really appreciated that. General gist of this one is more or less it's Morpheus or Morpheus Dream, however you call him. Morpheus is starting with his venture in hell, and basically him and Matthew the Raven land there and realize that this version of hell, again, it's where the storytelling is really cool. It's just different. It's not hot. It's actually cold, and like the damn souls were carrying their own fire. They started to talk a little bit about what this version of hell actually was, like did you have to believe in it or not, but they didn't really specify too much, so I'm laying some tread work for some things down the line which might be pretty cool. But basically the story is he's trying to go through hell to meet with Lucifer, Lucifer Morningstar, and try and find his helmet that some demon has in hell so he can regain his power and right all the wrongs and get everything else set back the way it needs to. It's pretty simple. I mean, that's kind of the gist of this episode, is basically his journey through hell and what he needs to do to retrieve his helmet. There's a dual story going on with John, I can't remember his last name, but John that now has the amulet of protection and turned everybody else into a big pile of goo sprayed on the wall. He is actually venturing to go get the ruby, actually, at the same time that Morpheus? Yeah, not Morbius, that's a completely different movie. Morpheus is trying to get his helmet back. So, two different stories going on at the same time. It's really kind of cool. You're going through, you start to... The demons are something that I really dig in this story, specifically the look of them and just kind of how they respond. I can't remember the name of the dude that is at the gates of hell that lets them in. Storm? Hammer? Strum something, I don't know. It's the same big dude that you see in a bunch of things like Troy, and he's been in a bunch of like the Ong Bak movies and stuff like that. Really cool, big gigantic dude, but they make all the demons really big just by stature, and then even bigger with special effects and whatnot, but they're really neat. Just the look of hell was very interesting. Again, like the trees, like people were kind of made in everything to, I guess that's where they're suffering, and it's pretty horrific, but also it's very interesting because nothing is super linear or anything like you'd think of castles when they're going to the palace to find Lucifer. And, they're going up spiral staircases that are woven in with people's eternity or souls, suffering in eternity, which he actually runs into Nada, I believe was her name, and apparently it's stumbled on just a little bit that is a previous love of Morpheus, something like 10,000 years ago, I believe they said. And you get a little story with that, or a little inkling that there is a story and that he's even capable of love, because I didn't really know if that's a thing that they do, being one of the Endless. Is that something that they even are concerned with? I don't know. So it's interesting that he has in the past, so there's definitely emotions are available for him to some extent. Anyway, they get there, and they're checking out, they actually meet with, I say dates, Morpheus and Matthew, who's now the Raven in Hell. Patton Oswalt, Raven in Hell. Anyway, they get there. They meet Lucifer, who looks awesome, by the way. Gwendolyn Christie, I believe, is playing Lucifer, and you first see her in the Immaculate Palace with the doors that open that are just gigantic. Again, the visuals look really cool in the movie. It's a show. Wings look really awesome on Lucifer. That's Gwendolyn Christie. Again, they pulled a really happy medium because he was telling the story really more of Lucifer as they were on the journey to Matthew about the fallen angel. Because again, she has more of the straight up, almost standard angelic face, with the like blonde curly hair and kind of Cupid cheeks sort of a thing. And then she's just kind of this big towering thing with these demon wings, and it's pretty sweet. And it's interesting because I think what you start to realize is that there's definitely a lot going on. Obviously, a lot's happened while Morpheus has been gone, and I don't know if maybe it's even been before that, but there's definitely a lot of, it seems like, conspiring against him, and or I guess it is just Lucifer probably always trying to expand her ranks and realms and things like that. But so Dream figures out which demon actually has his helmet and asks for it back, and then doesn't really happen that way. So a challenge is issued, and you kind of start to figure out what they mean by challenge. But in this, they get to pick a representative, apparently, which Dream picks himself, and then the demon picks Lucifer to represent himself, which is, of course, the smart move. And I don't know why wouldn't you pick Lucifer? And this is something that Dream Morpheus did clearly state even walking in, that Lucifer is far more powerful than him, even when he has all of his tools, or what did he call them? Equipment, whatever he calls them. And so you're like, okay, well, he's kind of screwed. But then you realize what the actual challenge is, and what's the wager? Oh, it's he gets his helmet back, or he serves an eternity of servitude in hell. So you'd think he'd be pretty confident, but that doesn't actually seem to be the case. He does tell Matthew before they start that he should leave and go back to the dream realm so that Lucien wouldn't be alone again, just in case something happened to him. Which Raven's he's the homeboy, he's gonna stay with him. But they get into this challenge where it's a very interesting thing, which I didn't see coming and I haven't really seen before, of sorts. I mean, I guess it's kind of like a magic challenge, but it's more of like a logic kind of thing. It was also kind of like some of the, I've never played specifically like RPG games or even kind of like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff where you have different cards and you have powers and you're kind of doing them against each other. So this one was, one person said they were some sort of an animal or something attacking the other, and then they got to respond by saying what they were. So it's more of a battle of wits, really, because she says she's a dire wolf coming after you, and then he's a hunter with specific things against wolves, and then she gets hurt. But what happens to their avatars or their ideas that they talk about actually reflects on them. So it kind of goes tit for tat. Dream's getting a little ahead, and then she kind of pulls the card of like bacteria eating virus, more or less, and then he's hitting that and becomes the world, and then she goes world ending supernova, I believe, something like that, and he goes even bigger, and it's universe, and then she pulls out anti-life, and then Dream's kind of seemingly dying, gets a little pep talk from Matthew, and then says that he is hope. Ding ding, henceforth the title, Hope in Hell, which leaves Lucifer at a bit of a loss of words, and calls the match right there, and forces the demon Kozan, I can't remember his name exactly, to give the helmet back, but he wouldn't. So the other that was there, and I can't remember her name, she was cool looking though, had like half a face melted off, took care of the demon, threw him off, and gave the helmet back. And then it kind of ultimately boiled down to, you could see that there was some sort of a scheming plot in the first place, because they still didn't seem like they wanted, or Lucifer didn't want Dream to go, and they definitely don't like the realm, or there's something else going on there, and was like, oh, why should we let you go? There's billions of demons here. And he was just like, that's true, I don't have any power, but dreams have power even in hell, apparently. And if there's no dreaming of heaven for them, what effect will that have on hell? To which Lucifer begrudgingly lets him go. So it's a very cool, very interesting scene, a lot of dynamic with different struggle things. It was very interesting to me just because the whole time, literally, I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be a physical fight. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, finally we're going to see what Morpheus can do. And by the end of the show, I'm hoping that we'll get like a full display representation of what he can do, in the different realms with his power once he gets everything fully back. I'm sure it will, but it's interesting because you hear that he's a bad man and that he can do all these things, and then like everybody's just kind of turned their back on him after the 100 years, and they kind of laugh at what happened and or his inability to stop it. Interesting things. So I just want to see what happens as he gets back introduced with more of the other endless, so like Desire and, oh man, they mentioned a couple of them. Haven't seen them yet though, so that'll be interesting as we get back there. End all be all, he has his helmet now so he can see, and he's got his sand that he got back in the last episode, and from there he can actually see his ruby, so he basically transports right there where we kind of have the two merging stories coming together. Merging stories of the second one was literally where so you have the son who is gone again. John is back, and he's on a mission to get his ruby, and he is being helped by Rosemary. Rosemary is a woman that randomly almost hit him or kind of nudged him in the road, just in the city, and then he's the standard sweet guy that he's kind of lost, he's very cordial, and my fault completely, all these things, and she's like, yeah, I'll take you, wherever you're going, I'm on the way. after he did say where he was going. And, then they're just conversing very casually, and this is where the wheels just kind of come off the train, where it's an interesting story. This is also where you can definitely tell that it's good writing and or it's based on good stuff, because the context of what's happening is you have this person that's really, really good and has genuine motives, seemingly, with Rosemary and the Rottweiler Susie, which is also super cute, by the way. And then you have John, who's had a very interesting life, and he basically, he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He just spills the beans on pretty much everything that he's done and every situation that's gone through. So basically the whole time, Rosemary's sitting at the front being very cordial and very inviting and trying to be helpful, even though he's saying some rough stuff. And then it's like, oh yeah, I just did pick up this seemingly nice guy that is also just out of an insane asylum, has hurt a lot of people, even though he says they were not good people. Just all these red flags. It's like, okay, I've got a serial killer in the back of my car, and she's trying to find different ways to, signal for help, which eventually she does with, which was a funny till it got really not funny circumstance that happened at the gas station where he's just like, oh, I'd love to get something to drink. I haven't had anything good to drink in the last 30 years. Oh, you've been locked up for 30 years in prison? It's like, no, in the insane asylum. Oh, okay, that's fine. And explodes one dude that was trying to help, but also by proxy trying to hurt him. The really interesting thing with all of that, to me, is the fact that he is a dude that's been lied to his entire life. He's coming to grips with that and realizing the rationale why, but even in the conversations in the car, as he's talking through some certain things where it's always about, well, people are selfish and basically all their motives are driven via that. And she says selfish, or it's afraid, or trying to help or trying to prevent hurt is also one. So he starts to see that he's seen the negative in people, rightfully so because of what he's been exposed to. But at the same time, Rosemary has been exposed to probably a lot of different things in her life, and she's seeing and finding the good in people. And I think that was an interesting thing for him to think about. I even said thank you, which was really cool, which ultimately I think ended up saving her. After the stories converge and Dream actually gets a hold of the ruby and then realizes something's been done to it, and it's got like a booby trap or something to where it explodes him back, knocks him out. Him and Matthew are down for the count, and then John just walks in, picks it back up, walks back out to the car where Rosemary's still waiting for him after she dropped him off at the storage unit, which is what he was going to his home for in the first place. And again, she was genuinely still trying to be a good person. You need to go somewhere. It was very interesting because again, he's like, tell me the truth. Do you want me to? He's like, no, I want to go home. And he gives her the actual talisman that his mother gave him for protection. And I mean, it's a very interesting gesture and turn in this story, because what it tells me is this is where you have this guy that is semi being set up as being a relatively ruthless and cold-blooded person, doesn't have any trusted people in his life, and people just keep dying around him, and he's not super sorry about it for the most part. But what it also is showing is that he's giving this thing that's probably one of the most valuable things in existence for humans specifically, and he just gives it to this person because she's truly good and truly what she says she is, so that she doesn't have to worry about anybody hurting her or doing any of these things. And it was an interesting dialogue. It just gives her that. Again, this is the most prized possession of probably any empire, any king, anything like that would have killed whole populations or whole peoples just for that, and he just gives it to her. Granted, he's got his ruby now, so he doesn't need that specifically, but he's still trying to do good. And I think the whole thing where this is going with me is interesting in that literally John we don't know his full backstory about what happened with, they keep alluding to he had to murder some people in arson and stuff like that. He keeps saying they're bad people, and other than that, of things that we've talked about that other people said were bad, he hasn't done anything horrible. The worst thing that we've heard that he's done, aside from the whole murder, arson thing, which, may be circumstantial, I don't know, I wasn't there, were you? Just saying, was steal the ruby from his mom in the first place. So if you take that away, all the other people and everything that he's done, he genuinely does not try and do. He's honest with people, don't do this, it'll hurt you. Granted, they're never going to believe him, but what else is he supposed to do? So it's weird. They're kind of setting him up as a bad guy, but he doesn't really appear to be a bad guy. Unless I'm just crazy. But that's where this one kind of ended. He's off. He gets the ruby and he's back going. She's got the amulet and she's out of there. And then we have Morpheus and Matthew that are just waking up from their stupor and they got to figure this out. So we got to see where the next episodes are going. I was kind of curious because it seemed like they were going to get the ruby really quickly all of a sudden out of nowhere. And I was like, oh, well, that's super easy. I wonder what the rest of the story is going to be. But now it seems like it's going to be a little more in-depth, a little harder to get it back, especially because we know John had a plan to use the ruby to protect themselves from Morpheus. So let's see what happens here. I'm interested to see. Either way, I'm digging the show. It keeps getting better and better for me. I hope you guys are digging it as well. Let me know what you think. You're as excited as I am to see what happens. I don't think we've heard the last of Lucifer either, but we'll have to see. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace out.